2017, the peanut gallery already got rolling on the floor. Great start. In 2017, Netflix decided they wanted in on the action and they wanted to make their own version of the Death Note. Death Note is, of course, an anime from 2006, from a manga from a little earlier, about the Death Note. So, it's a story of a young man who finds a book in which you can write names and these people will suddenly keel over dead. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Oh.
I mean, if you tell people the plot of Highlander, and you go, this is about people who live forever, and then they do that by chopping people's heads off. I'm still surprised that they managed to get that into series in the early 90s.
It's true, but they actually worked at it. These people, a little bit less so. What makes the Death Note story interesting, the Death Note and Light, because Light story, is that Light takes up this Death Note and starts killing like there's no tomorrow, and happily to do so, clearing the world of criminals left, right and center. No problem.
So he has the moral high ground.
He certainly thinks so. And another thing that is very specific about the Death Note, it is very specifically Japanese, with a Japanese reason for being. Let me put it this way. If you want to know more about that, we had a discussion about it in the one about the actual story, about why elements happen in this story. And if you're going to make a Western version of that, you need to think about this. What they did here was a Death Note shaped object, basically. They put in a light. Oh, they realized, well, he's Japanese. No, it's going to be in Seattle. So we call him Light, but we give him a different last name. I didn't even bother writing it down. So his father was a policeman, so we do that. So he has a mother and a sister. Oh, that's inconvenient. Let's just X that. So he has to be in high school, American high school. Oh yeah, American high school kid, Japanese high school kid, all the same. So Misa. Oh yeah, maybe she's a cheerleader. Oh yeah, let's do that. And then we give him a deadly weapon to have fun with Misa. They call her Mia because Misa is not a. I understand that Misa is not a girl's name in America.
Seattle.
In Seattle. So calling her Mia is fine, but they changed her personality. They changed Light's personality. They don't have a choice, because if you're gonna go for he's just a regular kid, and Mia is just a regular kid, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. So they didn't actually make it Japanese in Seattle. They made it like locals. Whatever is defined as local to Seattle. There could be Japanese people in Seattle. There's no reason why they couldn't be there.
But that's not
what they did.
That's not what they did.
All right.
Oh no! Did you thought that might be an option? No, there was not even a talk of that.
Right.
No. Light is just a regular Seattlean kid, and Mia is a Seattlean kid, a cheerleader. The thing about the Death Note story is it is a very tightly written story that fits together like a zipper. And if you mess with any part of it, it's... And that's exactly what it does. This is... They have a wonderful actor to play L. He's actually black, which was an interesting choice. I like him a lot, but he gets no chance. Light Turner, his name is Turner. He's okay. Dad's okay. But they simply misunderstood the entire premise. It's so far out of that looks like L. Yeah, he not in his L makeup, by the way. That he has a different makeup.
I'm just baffled that because Netflix has really put themselves forward as to want to do globally interesting stories that are from locals that are other.
This is too early. This is 2017. It's 5 years ago.
Oh, it's so 5 years ago.
It's all 5 years ago.
Yeah,
The Netflix has learned from this mistake. Everybody was upset about it because they basically simply did not understand any of it. Just missed any of it. And I have a list, but it's completely useless to go through it. Let's pick some things that were good for the Seattle version. This is fully the first time you see a really scary Ryuk. Ryuk's scary as F. And Light is actually scared of him, which is. But the point of the original story is that Light wasn't scared of this creep, of this monster, and he realized what it was. The fundamental. This Light is so dumb. He's just so a regular kid, and the Death Note with a regular kid, it doesn't work, because he would.
There's a plot point in the original that both L and Light were, brilliant.
Yeah.
Maybe not genius level, but they were brilliant.
Yeah, they were genius level.
So they were genius level. So they're. Otherwise, things would have probably imploded much faster.
He would have been caught much faster. There would have been the Death Note literally wouldn't have been dropped in front of Light, because I do feel, even though it doesn't look like that, I feel Ryuk picked Light specifically and dropped it roughly so where Light would find it, and maybe enchanted it so that only Light would see it, and that's what Ryuk does. And when in the original story Ryuk holds the Death Note to take onto somebody else, he finds somebody and does. They can find them. And that's why Light gets a Death Note, because he is that kind of personality. A regular kid would not be getting a Death Note. It's just not. And what do they do with it? So, I have a list of, because this film is so bad, I'm not even to talk about it. And this is not a production issue, this is not an actor issue, it's just plain a story choice issue. What are we going to write the story about? How we're going to write it? And they're messed up in the script, and the rest is fine. But there is a could have done section and a should have done section. And what they actually it's a should have done or should have done. There are two possible things they could have done. So there's a could have done, two possible could have done sections. One, they could have done what they did in the 2006 Japanese live action, is realize you have a finite amount of time, take the best parts of it. Basically what they should have done with this could have done is go to that other film, sit down with a pen and simply write down what they did, and just write your script accordingly, because they did everything right. If you're on a time crunch, if you have to make hard choices, what are we going to keep? What are you going to put in? It's all in that one. It's between the two movies. It's 4 hours. You can condense that down in 2 hours for Netflix TV. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. Yeah, that's one of the could have dones. The other could have done is take the idea of a Death Note and do what my original thought with the Death Note was. When the very first time I watched it, I realized very quickly, this is a morality tale. What do you do if you received a Death Note? What would you do? And they could have done that, and then just not get in a Light. Don't call him Light. Don't call her Misa. Don't put in a dad like that. Get other people. Just your regular Jack, Seattle Jack, with who has a life, and he receives a Death Note. And then what happens next? Write that story.
Then it would have slotted into the expanded universe of all these animes and films. well, the films at any rate. It could be the expanded universe of the films that were already available in Japan, and then create an extra story.
What in the 2016 story film where they have multiple Death Notes drop? Yes, one could have been dropped in Seattle.
Yeah, that's like Star Trek: The Next Generation, rather than do a reboot of TOS.
Yeah, but if my point is that you either do a straight up exactly what it says on the tin of the original, and then use your 2006 the people who already did the work to cut it down to the bare minimum. Do that exactly, and do Light exactly like that. The full psychopathic Light, the way he is. And yes, it's uncomfortable to watch, but that's the point of this show. Or you do Seattle Kid meets Death Note.
I'm surprised that after Hannibal that they pull any punches. I mean, you got Dexter, you got Hannibal. It's already been on television, and Dexter is old.
Yeah.
At this point, this is like 15 years old. Hannibal is 10 years old.
I've looked it up. Dexter is actually
You got Dexter on your list there?
Yeah, I have it on my original list because here, Dexter 2006 to 2013, Breaking Bad 2008 to 2013.
Yeah, and then there's Hannibal.
Didn't put Hannibal on there, but
it's about in the late teens or something, or the middle teens.
Yeah. It had more of a Dexter vibe to me because Dexter tries to do good by murdering, roughly. I haven't actually seen it.
You have the psychopath vibe.
Yeah, but he murders. But Light does this. Light does the same thing. Tries to do the same thing. He tries to do. That's his excuse. His excuse is to. But if you do not accept that Light is the bad guy of your story, then don't do the Light story, because then you do not understand it. If you try to make Light a normal kid or doesn't work, it's wrong. Please do something else. Do Seattle Jack meets Death Note, and Seattle Jack could be the son of a policeman suddenly holding a Death Note. Dad, I have this thing. It works. What do we do now? Then also answered all the questions that we had in the Japanese version of what does the morality of this Death Note, what is the nature of the Death Note, what is the nature of the Death Note in the Western world, in Seattle Death Note. We're talking about souls, actual Western idea of what a soul is like and how is it destroyed and what is the nature of Ryuk. He is a demon. He always came across to me as a straight up, by the book demon. A force of evil that doesn't actively do stuff, but it corrupts everything that's around it. That's what Ryuk does. And that is what you can use in your version to make it an interesting story. And it should be an amazingly good story if you either do the morality tale, Western version of Death Note, morality tale, or you do Light's psychopathic Light story.
Effectively got an Anakin Skywalker conundrum, because the middle movie, the prequel movies, Star Wars. Sorry for diverging, but you're talking about somebody being corrupted by a power that is coming from the outside, and finally giving in to that power. Whereas this is the story they could have told. If you say this is a young man, boy next door is like the most basic of tropes in Western storytelling, is the boy next door and turns out to be the great grand hero. Fantastic. Now you got Anakin Skywalker, who is not quite the boy next door, but he's all this blonde and all this lovely and all this pretty, and then still gets corrupted, which is one of the more interesting things about the prequels.
And you could have done something like that with the Death Note, and then maybe not answer the question, but ask the question, what is the nature of the Death Note? Would he have been corrupted if he had not had the Death Note? Or maybe there are
Does
so
he
many.
even get, because the Western storytelling is about the struggle between good and evil.
Yeah, but you get
so
a choice.
You get a choice.
You get a choice.
And the thing is,
He gets a choice.
He does get a choice.
I mean, no, he should in this story.
Yes.
If we write Seattle Jack meets Death Note, then he should get a choice of knowingly going into the Death Note, and then if he doesn't, so you have two choices. He can either do it, and then you can do a whole. Then he turns into the bad guy, and you have to do that story, or you can go the other way and say, what are we going to do, and do the Frodo option? Yeah. What are we going to do to get rid of this evil? And what is the nature of this evil? Because they have to figure out what is the nature of this evil and how to combat it. There is no solutions to this one, because the anime doesn't tell you the nature of the Death Note or how to get rid of it. You do the Frodo option. You start. He talks to Dad, and they try to figure out how to destroy the damn thing.
Where is Mount Doom? Where can we find Mount Doom?
Is Mount Doom the thing we need, and how should we go to that? And you have that story. So you have lots of stories you can write, and that's one of the things I think why this entire story, Death Note story, is a new story. There are so many stories you can write about this. So many options that can still happen that only very few have done. And this movie completely misses the point altogether, because it didn't do any of it. It just did something.
So what happens to Light?
Does it matter?
I guess not, but like...
This Light survives, and he and Dad survives, and yeah, like I said, it doesn't matter.
There are no stakes, because
there's no stakes.
Frodo did not survive.
Yeah.
Bilbo almost didn't survive. He survived until the end, survive, but he was
destroyed,
blemished by it for the rest of his life. Although he got to live it out. But fortunately, there is such a thing as the Elven Heaven, or wherever they go to, the land in the west.
The Western lands, yes.
But Frodo had to lay down his life for getting rid of the Death Note.
There's no consequences in this. There is the only power struggle is actually between Light and Mia, because she's not quite as big as a pushover as she is in the original.
Hallelujah.
And that ends badly for one of them, but the actual mechanics, what made the anime so good is that the actual mechanics of how to get the Death Note to do what you need it to do at the right moment, and how does it work, they don't get any of it. The Death Note has a list of rules about yay or long, and there are reasons for every single rule. One of the rules is, yes, you can put in a death, but you cannot have third-party deaths attached to it. So you can't say, okay, somebody is going to die in a train accident on the way home from work, because either miraculously only one person dies in the train accident, or it doesn't happen, because it cannot have a third-party fatality.
So you can't have one person targeted in a flying airplane to crash.
And you also can't say, I will send this person to kill that person, and then they kill over dead. Mm. So you can't do an assassination attempt of a third person.
That's handy. And
of course, all of that is gone, because that's when they have the WFT on here, because the rules, the fuck, they're out of here. The rules, they didn't understand why these rules exist. And every rule in there, there is actually a mistake in the original manga, which the anime corrects, because something happens really early, and the mangas are written on the go, and then published, and then there's written more. So this could not be corrected. You couldn't go back and correct it, but the anime could, because it was a little bit later when the story was already over, so they could correct it. And it was a motivational thing. They made a mistake with the motivation, and they fixed it later. They realized it. This thing doesn't realize there are such things like mistakes that you can make. Let's just make them left, right, and center, and all. Ah! Seriously.
Yeah, I have questions.
I see a hand
Peanut
up at
gallery
the
here.
peanut gallery has her peanuts out.
Holding up some peanuts. Flicking peanuts to the...
Thank you.
So, what I'm hearing is that they failed to transcribe the premise. Because if you take something that is so alien to the culture that whoever Netflix is in Seattle, I don't know who they are. Let's assume they're a bunch of Americans. It's, I don't know.
I've heard
But
that Seattle
let's say-
is in the States.
And it's Netflix, possibly an American company. I've never looked it up. So you take a premise, you don't have to take the story, but okay, you take the story, the characters, and the premise, and you transcribe it to a completely different part of the world for an audience in that part of the world. And it sounds to me that they completely missed the transcribing bit. Because if you don't get the same, you can make a different story, or you can make the same premise, but
They
change the details. I've seen many adaptations from one culture to another culture, and they wanted to make a movie or something like that.
They make two mistakes in translation. One, they make the actual mistake in translation of not of going from Japan to America, but they also change Light from a psychopath to a regular kid. And that's even worse than because they apart from some details, you can actually take the Japanese story and plonk it if you stick to Light is a psychopath and L is brilliant and also very
And you have a death demon.
And you have a death demon. But the demon is the least of your problems, because that demon fits in really well, surprisingly
With
well
North American,
in Western culture. We do know what demons are.
All sorts of supernatural creatures.
And the only discussion should have been, when would Seattle Jack know the consequences of, or Seattle Light, suppose Seattle version of Light. When would Seattle Light know of the consequences of using the Death Note? Because that's a problem in the original. To Western sensibilities, he doesn't know it at the right moment. If you do that right, and you just do straight up the story, it's where Light is knowingly chooses to use the Death Note for the greater good and try and rid Seattle of crime life, just the same as the original Tokyo Light did in Tokyo. That would have worked, and you get the same problem, because this L and the international world and L is going to have the same problem with this Light, because you cannot have that in the world, not in Seattle and not in Tokyo.
And that's one of the things that
and that would have been the same too.
That I get angry over is that there's this pretense that people from another culture aren't people. Yes, you're looking at literally the other side of the world, but people are still people. Humans are humans.
Psychopaths are the same everywhere.
Boys and psychopaths are psychopaths. And there is not as much that separates us, but the culture we live in, the language we speak, and the visuals that we present ourselves in. And this boy was already blonde, but he's a blonde Japanese guy. So put a blonde Japanese guy in, for Japanese heritage, in Seattle.
You can, but it doesn't need it. It doesn't even need it, because
I know it doesn't need it, but it's like those basic things could have been done, and they didn't even do that.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly.
Why does it have to be a white guy?
Because that's there's so much wrong with this.
You don't even bother with that.
Here, messed up, shoddy, WTF. Down the drain. Here I have. Oh, too much money for special effects and you know.
That's basically your death knell anyway. So my other question is, who do they think the audience is for this?
I have no idea.
Who did Netflix make it for?
My question is, did they think anything at all? Did they use their brain at all? I don't think so. It's not that hard to take something as brilliant but brilliantly simple as Death Note and stick it in Seattle. It shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this. You have to work at making it this bad. Really. Just do what it says on the tin. Just do that. These are archetypes, and it doesn't matter that they're in Japan.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't matter that they're in Japan. It doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't even matter what gender they are.
So I guess it's not a recommended viewing.
It's Can I go home now, please? Guys, do better. Do better. This story deserves better. This was garbage. 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 That is my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Garbage.
Garbage. Ik ga hem uitzetten.